Welcome to the show, everyone. Kind of getting the hang of things here. Welcome to the TylerBloyer.com live stream. Today, the title of the show is Consciously Creating Freedom, and we'll be going into depth on how to consciously generate and manifest freedom outwardly by doing sort of a deep dive inwardly into the psychology and a little bit of clarification on terms and definitions. So stick with me. It's going to be a good show today, and look forward to presenting the information that I've been working on for quite some time and putting together this information in a presentable format, which can be archived in a permanent fashion, and then worked on and revised and updated and corrected if need be over time. But this is part of what we're doing here on the live streams, is not just so I can be out there in front of people trying to get attention online or to be getting a lot of likes or anything like that, but what we're doing is partially it's a selfish way of publishing because it requires a lot of the upfront work, but then there's not a lot of after editing. And so the format here is partially so that I can continue to produce content without having to be stuck editing or trying to outsource and pay for a lot of editing. And so, the goals here are really to provide information in a high quality way that's hopefully valuable to those that are interested in going into the information. And it's TylerBloyer.com. It's open for me to stream and do whatever I want to do. And this is what I want to be doing. No one's paying me to do any of these shows, or I don't have a sponsor. This is just me. I pay for everything that you see in front of you. Some of this podcasting gear has been used for several years now. It's outdated, and I'm doing the best with what I have, which I think everyone should do. Start with what you have and build from there. And as the show goes on, hopefully I can kind of be a living example of how we can start kind of at a base level and build something hopefully that'll be very valuable, not just to, again, me and my selfish ego, but I'm trying to actually build an archive of information here that'll help not only just my immediate circle and my friends and family help understand my thoughts and how I live my life better and put myself out there in that personal way, but then hopefully to reach a wider audience eventually of people that can adapt the information that I have and found massive improvements in my own personal life because of that. And a worldview that now is much more holistic and makes sense rather than any kind of a shattered worldview that, of course, there's a process for that, and there's a teardown and a deconstruction that needs to take place. But beyond that, we need to rebuild a holistic worldview that makes that's in harmony with nature, with reality, with that which is. And so there's no labels, there's no isms, there's no hyphenated activist groups that I'll be trying to push on anyone. So really, I'll be relying on much greater minds than mine and bringing in, and today you'll see that, I'm relying in this presentation today on people that are, much smarter than I am, and, luckily for us, there's solutions are out there, and if we can just take these great works and incorporate what a lot of people were trying to portray, but at the same time, keeping in mind that just because I present something or pull somebody's quote or even bring somebody on this show, or if you look through past shows that I've had, it doesn't mean that I'm promoting that person and putting them up as somebody that I'm, if somebody's a mentor to me and a personal guide and has been like a horseman of my own personal apocalypse, then I'll definitely try to point that out and bring those people on the show, or if they're no longer with us, then I can mention who those people are. But I think over time, it doesn't need to go, it can be left unsaid, essentially. But we'll have pages on the website to archive lists and reading lists. And let me try something really quick here. The lighting, I know, is not that great, but I think that's a little bit better. The way it was shining in my face there was a little off. Okay, so what I'd like to go into today first is the new page on the website, tylerbloyer.com/live. And while I'm doing that, okay, I'm a publisher, producer, editor, and content maker and host of this show, so it's a little rocky, and I do apologize for that. Times when I need to look away or take a break and check the audio or check on something, and I'm trying to make it as streamlined as possible. I think what I'm doing by myself is something I could teach other people to do, and, this is something that you could do by yourself. It doesn't take... not that it wouldn't be nice to have helping hands. I'm not saying that or like trying to compare me with somebody else or anything like that. Anyway, so the live show page can be accessed from this menu, and there's live show. It's also just tylerbloyer.com/live. And we can go... I think my internet is choking on the bandwidth here with the streaming. Here's the live page. Now, you can also access the live streams, obviously, directly from Facebook and YouTube. There's an archive in the menu under feed, and it's just chronological. And then there's my Within the Stones Creature of Control podcast in there too. And I'll clean up the content as time goes on and it's necessary, but at this point, I don't have a whole heaping mound of content that needs to be organized all that well. And again, this show is starting out pretty new and will be built over time, and the website will be improved as well. So Discord, you can download the software if you don't have it installed, and then once you have that installed, you can click in this link, will take you directly into the Discord chat. And the Discord has a live call-in room, which I'm in right now, and I'm unmuted. So you could actually go into there and actually listen to the live stream through Discord, which would probably be about 10 or 15 seconds ahead of me. And that's fine, because when we go to the end of the presentation, we'll take some live calls, and when we do that, you're going to be muted, hopefully automatically, when you come in. That's how I've set it up. And then I'll have to unmute you from the server side, and then you should be able to speak. So even if you're unmuted, you'll still be muted on the server end. So you shouldn't be able to hear other people talking. You should be able to hear me only. And when I call to you, I'll unmute you, and then you'll be able to come on the show. Now, I don't have a ton of viewers. I'm not expecting, actually, a ton of calls or anything, but this is kind of a beta test today, so if somebody even wants to come on and just test it out with me, that would be really helpful. I'd appreciate that. I've already done pre-show testing, obviously, but the live stream incorporation of it into the software and the mixer and trying to make sure that all works, I will, hopefully not have any issues, but this gives the ability, again, so going back to why I'm here and why I'm even doing this is it's not necessarily to take live calls and to have people take over the show. And this information I could pre-record and edit afterward. It's just the workflow that I'm trying to get into is prepare the show, execute the show, move on to the next show. Not prepare the show, execute the show, 3 days of editing, or whatever it takes, because I have a lot of other things going on. Again, I don't have the money to hire somebody to do all that. So for me to be able to publish the show live and then walk away, and then, that evening I can post it on my website, I can start working on the next episode. And so really, again, I'm not going to be probably taking live chattings and reading all your comments and things like that, but the Discord gives people a way to come in and join the show and ask questions at the end of the presentation. So I will be going through a full live presentation, and then after that I'll take the calls. So I'm not going to, jump on calls just because people are in the Discord during the presentation. And in fact, I probably won't even be looking at it. Today I might, because it's a test of it. So the next thing I wanted to go over here while we're on the website is each show. Here's last week's show. Has the slides posted. So I zip up the slides and you can download the slides and use them, share them widely, use them in your own work. I don't care. There's no need to come to me and ask permission. I've created most of the slides, and moving forward, most of the content is going to be me creating the slide. Of course, if it's a quote or something, I'm just pulling it from that person and creating the slide. Some original slides with my own words and things like that. But the slide deck really kind of adds to the show. If you're listening to the audio or something and you want to flip through the slides or save them for later, again, use them at your own discretion. It just helps add that extra value to the material. And so what else do we have on the schedule for announcements today? So now, again, it's a live show. So last show I had several spelling issues, especially in one slide. Like, there was a slide that I made like a while back for another purpose, and I just kind of, at the end, I thought this would be a good one to add in here. And it was the one talking about how everything's inverted. Like, just look at us, governments destroy freedom, doctors destroy health, but like every word of destroy was misspelled. I saw that later after I was spell checking all my other slides, and I'm not going to go back and correct that in the live presentation. I've corrected it in the download that you can download, and this is a live show, so if there's a mistake in the spelling, don't be so critical of me. Maybe you could let me know. That would help, and then I can go back and fix it. And it's the same with the information presented in the show. If I've made some mistake in work that I've put out, I will work to correct it. And sometimes I'll work diligently to correct myself, which I've done up until now with the Falling into the Movement series that I still have yet to actually produce the official series, but all the surrounding preliminary work that I've provided up front, including the presentation Voluntary Slaves, is separating me from previous things that I may have espoused, such as like voluntarism and the non-aggression principle and things like that. So I would go watch that work before just, critically jumping on me for saying something like I just said about the non-aggression principle. Now I will be taking next week off. The show will probably have about anywhere from 2 to 3 live streams a month, usually on Sunday around this same time. And next week I know I'll be off. We're headed out of town to celebrate my sister's birthday, and then on the 22nd of September I should be ready and prepared to present the Struggle for Freedom Part 1 of the Falling into the Movement Trap series. And in the Struggle for Freedom, we'll be taking a much more in-depth look at man and man psychology and his sort of apathy towards freedom, the antipathy to freedom even, and we'll talk a little bit about that today as well. And so that's it for announcements. Also, another correction really quick, because I mentioned that there are 1,500 hours of indoctrination through the public school system, and I need to correct myself that it's actually a whopping 15,000 hours, and I think I definitely know that. It's just sometimes it rolls off of my tongue as 1,500 hours. So today's show, again, consciously creating freedom. And it started off, I was trying to build a show on relationships. And then what we'll get into here is that this whole show is actually about the relationship with the self and the relationship with, what people have called the higher self or the imperial self. This show was going to be about actually external relationships, and now it's it ended up kind of evolving into a much more in-depth look at the relationship one has with the self. So we'll have to save what should probably be later work with when we talk about building positive relationships with others and creating a family and a condition which is going to be most prosperous and like a petri dish to create an environment for freedom inside. And that's what we'll be talking about today. So again, consciously creating freedom from tylerbloyer.com. And this first slide we have says, the greatest obstacle to discovery is not ignorance, it is the illusion of knowledge. So that's Daniel J. Borstein, a high-level academic, and it's just another way of saying what's been said in 100 other quotes that I could have put here. And it's thinking that you know something, thinking that you have it all figured out already, and thinking that what you've been taught and the way that you have it is correct already, and you don't need to look into any other ways that it could be. Or just an overall, these false titles and flattering titles that people wear. It gives them some sort of the illusion that they already have it all figured out. And as a society, that's one of our biggest problems, is that we don't respect what's real and what's of nature, and we actually end up worshiping false gods of flattering titles and authority and the appeal to consensus, as discussed last week. And even this, I've graduated, or I have a degree, or I have the title, or the doctor, or the lawyer, or any of the flattering titles that we respect. And then beyond that, just the overall kind of approach that people take to information, or to people like myself, to people that talk about things that aren't mainstream and aren't going to be, they'll look at it as conspiracy, or, that's out there and I don't want to think about that. And just this overall antipathy towards knowledge and seeking and being able to take in something without accepting it and critically thinking about it and applying methods of truth discovery to the information. And if it's true, it doesn't matter how bad it makes you feel, or how dumb it makes you feel, or how wrong you were previously. If the new information is compared to the information that you have, and it shows the information that you have to be incorrect, then, what is it with the human species that has such a hard time of accepting new information that comes in, especially from sources that aren't necessarily mainstream? Like someone like myself, or any other alternative researcher, or much more accredited people that actually are, high up in the hierarchy of flattering titles. But, another way to say this, and actually kind of a dig and a different way to look at it, is from Black's Law Dictionary. And it says, one cannot complain of having been deceived when he knew the fact and gave his consent. And this is kind of my dig. And, in the legal language, this is the way of saying, just because you're so dumb and ignorant that you don't understand what we're talking about here, it doesn't mean your tacit consent is not still accepted, right? And that's coming from the law itself, which is the language that none of us know and none of us were taught and none of us seem to want to know either, is we want to remain ignorant of the law that we live under, which is man's law, which is based on the ultimate highest law form of our current man's law system, is the Bible. And that might sound a little weird to people, but we'll have to go into that, because when I'm talking about the Bible, hey, good day, Neo, nice to see you, thanks for joining, man. I'm not talking about, now the atheist will come on the other side of anybody who ever mentions the Bible, and the atheist throws it all out like it's just all total ridiculousness, like some silly belief system like Santa Claus, and they're just going to throw it out completely when I say that the law in our man's law system that we all live under is based on the Bible. Now, that's the mistake. Is they're what they're doing is they're taking a literal interpretation and discarding it when and they're anthropomorphizing what are allegorical, mythological stories that are using wisdom teachings passed down through time and condensing them into allegorical stories about how nature, God, and you and how natural law work. That's what the Bible is. It's not a literal. See, the big mistake that people are making, if I even start to talk about law or the Bible and how the law is based on the Bible, and which we're going to go into a little bit today, quotes that come directly from the Bible, is they will, again, the atheistic mindset takes what I'm saying about the Bible and completely throws the whole thing aside and says that's all total utter nonsense that nobody needs to look at. I can't believe that people believe in things like this false guy in the sky. And so again, they're anthropomorphizing these allegorical teachings, and anthropomorphizing means to take something that's not about human beings, like it's not related to us, it's outside of the human being, but to give it all these human characteristics. And so they're mistaking the terminology for Jehovah in the Bible is what it means is, and which we call God. So the definition of what you're reading when you're reading in the Bible about Jehovah and God is nature, everything, existence, all of the universe. So if all of the universe is the definition of Jehovah and nature and the existence itself, and what can be actually, the words slip my mouth there, but it's self-evident. Basically, if you're saying that existence doesn't exist, which is what the atheist is ultimately saying, then that's absurd. That's completely ridiculous. And if we're talking about complete nihilism, solipsism, then we don't have a starting point. And that person and I, if that's where they stood and they came to the point where I was trying to explain that what the Bible's talking about when it's talking about God is it's talking about existence. And so Jehovah, the definition of what God is in the Bible, we're not talking about the Elohim or all these other things in the Old Testament. We're talking about in the New Testament, the allegorical story of Jesus is just that. It's an allegorical fiction to explain God and the law, and that's Jesus is natural law and the Word of God, Logos. And so I'll try to give another disclaimer at some point during this lecture. But that, if you're taking what I'm saying about God or nature or the laws of God as religion, then you're the fool. You're the one making the mistake. And if you're saying, well, that's ridiculous, and look at me with my fancy title and my scientific worldview that's completely atheistic. Atheism is self-refuting, which I just went into describing, and if you missed it, I can go over that again. And that is that God and Jehovah in the Bible are not talking about some deity in the sky, or even aliens and that type of stuff. In the New Testament, God is literally existence itself. Jehovah is everything, all of nature. And so when we're supposed to worship God and worship Jehovah, we're talking about respecting that which is real, respecting that which is actually in existence. Not flattering titles, not persons, not even, your citizen, legal, maritime, stock market traded, slave, birth certificate, fiction, your person. That's your person. So a person in legal language is a fiction. It doesn't exist. And so the mistake that we've made and that what we're doing as a human species is we're respecting that which is not real. And so we need to go back to worshiping that which is real, worshiping God, worshiping existence, not flattering titles, not the appeal to consensus, not the appeal to authority. You need to understand yourself, which is what we're going to be going on into today. And so George Simmel says, the educated person is someone who knows how to find out what he does not know. And so at least the educated person knows that he doesn't know things and also knows how to go learn those things. And, I was going to insert this famous Donald Rumsfeld clip here of the known knowns, the unknown unknowns, and then the unknown unknowns, or whatever he says. And maybe I'll share that in the notes or something. Right? Because as Socrates said, that once, you come to know something, you realize that you know nothing, something along those lines, right? But it doesn't mean that we can't know things, right? It doesn't mean that we can't come to understand the truth about certain things. And it doesn't mean that we can't then take that and speak it to other people. So don't mistake, some of these things for like, well, you can't know anything then. Well, no, you can come to know a lot of things. And someone who's been studying with their thumb on the pulse of something for like 10 years or 15 years, or some of these people that, I would say are personal mentors of mine, being 20, 30, 40 years in the field of so-called conspiracy research, or just alternative, or what's really just known as actually official research, and actually doing it right and reading and properly going through information that you're trying to seek. Now, so don't get it twisted that I'm trying to say, so like you can't know anything. And now someone that has been doing that for all that time, they definitely can speak about certain things in a way that it's not me mansplaining it. It's not me, trying to get, like I said, get a lot of likes or get a lot of people to look at me. It's just that once you've come to understand certain things, you can take that information and share it with other people. And I do that personally. If you knew me in my personal life, you would understand that I basically am constantly talking about what people term as like philosophical concepts and deep issues and looking at things in this different way, when really I've just been able to get out of the primary matrix basically and into a secondary matrix where, yes, we're all still enslaved, and as I went into last week and we'll go into further, that even those in the primary matrix or in the secondary matrix are still operating in the fiction. They're not in the real. They're still in the secondary matrix of the, like I said, the legal fictions, the flattering titles and false gods, when the very first commandment of the highest law is to not worship any false gods, except for Jehovah. And of course, like, I'm paraphrasing and not doing a good job of quoting exactly the lines, but there's also like 5,000 different ways of interpreting the definition too. So another thing that I've been doing more recently is I have about 5 different digital Bibles and a few different physical Bibles, and comparing the different passages, because once you understand, like I said, that the Bible is law, and the God is defined and Jehovah are as defined as everything. So it's a huge mistake to throw it out, which we should throw out the silly religious literal actual, like taking every line as literal interpretations. That is the mistake that humanity has made with all the religions and the spin-off religions and the Protestant religions and the Roman Catholic Church and the Mormon Church and anything else that's taken and added books to it, which the Bible explicitly states not to do, to read other books in addition to the Bible. It's just basically the secondary matrix dwellers are still living under man's law system. So we need to study God's law. We need to study natural law and how that works. And this is not me pushing religion on you. Like, stop. I know how people's minds work, so I'm just going to keep repeating that. This is not me pushing religion on you. I'm not being a religious evangelical right now, okay? Talking about something that I've come to understand when interpreting the Bible that is very important that people understand, that this book is allegorically speaking to us. It's not literal. So you gain the allegorical teachings by reading it that way and understanding that it's talking about just existence itself as God. So worshiping existence, that which is real, that which is not man-made, not artificial, not man's law, which we all live under. Even the so-called anarchists, if you watch and pay close attention, most of them will still show up at court when called, and they won't be dragged into a court, as you should be if you're not worshiping the false god of government. But all of us, and including myself, are living under these man's laws because this is what we've chosen, voluntarily chosen as a people. We've voluntarily put ourselves in this condition. And through volunteerism, we are accepting these conditions, and whether you like that or not, whether that makes you mad or not, whether you're a voluntarist or not, that's how legal volunteerism is defined. So it doesn't matter what your movement volunteerism says that volunteerism is. It matters what the law of man that we all live under says that volunteerism is, which a citizen of the United States government is defined as a volunteer. It's a voluntary situation, becoming a voluntary slave, essentially. So we are all voluntarily slaves because of our own ignorance and apathy towards nature and the truth. Now, to open this up, creating a positive relationship with the self, the truth, and then others is always more important than any movement, group, or cause. So, again, this is where I kind of started with building this episode. But, as you can see, the very first step is to creating a positive relationship with the self and the truth. So, we're not talking about some kind of selfish thing or being, overly selfish with creating a positive relationship with the self. One cannot engage in a positive relationship with reality, the truth, and others and create a positive family and environment if they themselves are in self-loathing, if they themselves are shattered and broken, if they themselves don't have love for the self, if they don't know thyself, if they don't understand and ask and improve on who and what they truly are and what we're really doing here. If that doesn't exist, they may have shells of things known as relationships with other people. They may have the false sense of having a relationship with another person, but ultimately, what they're probably going to end up seeking out in that situation is another self-loathing, lost person who doesn't love themselves and therefore cannot give others love if they don't have it for themselves and that which is. So ultimately, that's what we'll be going into in this episode, is creating that positive relationship with the self and seeking truth. And so again, there's no possible way to build onto that and to actually truly love your children, your family members, your grandparents, parents, anyone else that you're claiming that this relationship with them is true, if you have not first established a genuine imperial self, a genuine connection with nature and with the self and with truth, then everything else beyond that is fake. It's not real. If you're condoning and fawning this fake virtue about other people and you're this hollow shell of a self-loathing person, then that's all just fiction. Anything you're saying that you're really caring about this group or that group, or this impoverished minority or this one, or these transgender people or this non-binary people, and you're so concerned about everything about them, but it's all external and nothing inside is being worked on to fix any conditions around you to create that positive environment and positive relationship, then it's not real. What you're doing is living in inauthentic life, okay? And this is a hard truth that people really need to look at themselves and ask the question about, do they have this relationship going on with the self? Are they fulfilling the needs, even, of the care that's needed to give oneself? And no. The answer is no. The answer is people are self-hating. There's no possible way that the conditions externally could be manifesting if all of us, or the bulk, overwhelming vast majority of us, had inwardly self-love and self-mastery and self-governance and a diligence and responsibility towards freedom and the truth. Then, we could say that, okay, that I'm wrong and that nobody is having these internal problems that we're going to be going into or talking about. But when you look at the external world and you see what's happening, then you can't be honest with yourself. You can be asleep and have your head in the sand, I guess, and lie to yourself and say that everything's fine. But if you're honest with yourself about the current human condition and you do the due diligence and study to try to understand the world around you and in you, then you can't be honest with yourself and say that, oh yeah, humanity is having some massive spiritual awakening and everybody loves themselves, obviously, because look at how wonderful everything is. It's the exact opposite is true. Nothing external is not created first internally by the human beings that are creating the conditions in this world. So we can't just sit and blame the top-down authoritarian structure, or the patriarchy, or the Illuminati, or the bankers. Again, it's starting here at the bottom level with what comes first is people's personal relationships with themselves. And we can see that there's an antipathy to the self, an antipathy towards nature. People live in fear. And externally, what manifests when we're all corrupt in this way and psychologically dismembered and have this hatred for the self is you get a giant, massive, external Big Brother control system feeding on all of our psychological problems in the cybernetic, technocratic, Luciferian death cult control grid, or whatever you like to call it. So again, the path to freedom is the path of the individual, not any group or collective, ever, and can never be, because of the way that the self-evident truth of this statement works, is that there is no other way to seek the path to freedom besides being the individual doing it. If you're ever in any group or collective or ism or hyphenated thing trying to seek the truth and discover the path to freedom, it's only going to be a false trail. It's only going to be an inauthentic groupthink situation. There are truths there. There are things that can be gained working with others. There are things that can be gained in hierarchical structures. There are societies that can work in a truly, what the voluntarists mean by, voluntary interaction with other people. But we need to be practicing selfhood. We need to be practicing knowing thyself, understanding and asking those deep questions and seeking the answers. Not lost up in groups and collectives that don't know how to critically think about things and end up in the NPC world. So what is groupthink? Well, groupthink is the practice of thinking or making decisions as a group in a way that discourages creativity or individual responsibility. Now, what this is there's no exclusion, first of all, to all the secondary matrix people in this. So when you're looking at the groups of whatever it is, libertarians, voluntarists, anarchists, anarcho-communists, anarcho-capitalists, New Age, nonsense, alternative conspiracy, if there's an ism, a hyphenated activist group cell thing where people get together and they all chant the same religious, notions about what to do, then they're also practicing groupthink, and which discourages creativity and individual responsibility. So the voluntarist is a perfect example of this, because it ends up just becoming this, well, if it were just voluntary thing, and I know that people don't think that it's that they're just waiting, and that they're being very active and they're doing all these things to combat, the tyrannical system by begging that the situation remain what the government has defined as how it already works, which is a voluntarism. So, I'm not trying to get into some logical word game here. This is an actual thing where these people won't see it, though. They won't see it. Why? Because they're in groupthink. Because they are in a system of philosophy that has contradictions, and they won't question those things because there's a group of other people and they're all saying the same thing. So how can we all be wrong? And what I'm asking people to do is take a deep inward look at themselves and go and watch, some of the work I've already done on breaking down the problem with the movement and falling into the movement traps and the voluntary slaves, which is really, what it really is we are involuntary servitude to man's law over nature. And then be honest with yourself and drop the label, because you just are. I am. That's what I am. I don't need to have a movement and a label and an ism and all these other things. I am part of creation. I am part of nature. I am part of the real. And I don't need to define and have an ism and a label and have a citizenship and a birth certificate and a social security. Those are all fiction. That's all man-created things. Those are all things that aren't real. And so to get out of this, what we're trying to break open here and put people's foot in the door of is to get out of this, we need to go back to the real. Right? Just like in the movie The Matrix. Don't respect and live in the artificial. Live in the real. And this message will be something that I will continue to package and put out for a long time to come. And the surrounding information that's needed to talk about this is going to take a while to get out. And so I'm here for the long haul, and we'll be doing this as long as we can. As long as it takes, really. And whatever length that is. So here D.H. Lawrence says, the most erroneous assumption is to the effect that the aim of public education is to fill the young of the species with knowledge and awaken their intelligence, and so make them fit to discharge the duties of citizenship and enlightened and an enlightened and independent manner. In an enlightened and independent manner. Sorry, I glanced at the other screen, and that's what I get for doing that. That and D.H. Lawrence talks in this funny way. Nothing could be further from the truth. The aim of public education is not to spread enlightenment at all. It is simply to reduce as many individuals as possible to the same safe level, to breed and train a standardized citizenry, to put down dissent and originality. That is the aim in the United States. Whatsoever the pretensions of politicians, pedagogues, and other mountebanks, and that is the aim everywhere else. Mountebanks is like snake oil salesman. And again, it's a strange connotation, or at least for me, the way that D.H. Lawrence speaks. Something most of us probably aren't used to, but what he's saying here is no less true because of the way it's said. What he's saying can be backed up by many other high-level researchers if you need the appeal to the flattering titles, but also it's just written on the wall. And the outcome-based education model and Common Core are the groupthink board collective agenda to dumb down and enslave the population. And these aren't my opinions. This is exactly what the school system is designed to do. And recently I've been reviewing Common Core and Charlotte Iserby's work and John Taylor Gatto's work again, and going through and putting together another presentation that I'll be providing on this subject again in the future. So I would also suggest to complement what we're going in here today and what we'll be going into later in September with last week's live stream, An Honest Assessment of the Current Human Condition. And in this live stream, I gave my assessment of where we're at and where we're at in consciousness and where the human species is at in this battle, in this spiritual battle for freedom and to fight slavery on this planet, which has become, this thing where people are like, well, I'm not in a cage and I'm not enslaved and I don't know what you're talking about. And again, you have to be in a complete state of self-loathing and hatred and total fractured mind in such a state that you're not paying attention to what's going on. And if you're not angry about what's happening in your name, in your fake tax slave corporate fiction name, and what these fictions have created on this planet, which is like a living hell, then you're not paying attention. And I suggest taking a look at that work and going into what we talked about last week, which really here Charles Bukowski sums up kind of how I feel about the situation, and when he says, I see men assassinated around me every day. I walk through rooms of the dead, streets of the dead, cities of the dead, men without eyes, men without voices, men with manufactured feelings and standard reactions, men with newspaper brains, television souls, and high school ideas. And when I saw this quote, I was like, okay, there's somebody who's paying attention. He's nailed it here. This is how I feel about the so-called men around me, or even the women that are inhabiting this planet at the current time. Is basically, what the dark occultists call them, which is the dead. And they're saying that because they're unbegun, because they've not even begun to discover anything about what I'm talking about here today, or been talking about recently. They're deep into the primary matrix. They're falling for almost every social engineering, depopulation, eugenics agenda, satanic agendas that are being peddled to them. And they love it. They absolutely love it. They beg for these conditions because it's so much better than actually having to work towards anything real or to struggle for freedom and to actually take that responsibility of what it would actually take to create the conditions of freedom in your life and then in the life of others and society and the community around you. That's all taking on way too much responsibility. So let me just buy into all the bullshit propaganda that's being peddled and pushed down my throat, and all the fear and all the meaningless tasks that I fill my life with. And let me not ever really do any actual work towards improving the conditions in my own life or the others. And I'll just take all the entertainment and all the bells and whistles and all the dopamine hits and just keep giving me the dopamine hits to the point where, I can just live in my disillusioned life, apathetic towards anything going on around me, and be drugged up on sugar and every other drug that the pharmaceutical industry pushes down my throat. And let me just love being in my little cage and my little slave conditions, as long as it's comfortable, Captain. You know what I mean? And that if that's not your assessment, then I don't know where your head is at. I don't know what kind of Seroquel SSRI inhibitor shit that you're on, if that's not the way that you're seeing the planet. And, I don't need you to come in and try to argue with me and tell me that I'm wrong, because it's self-evidently true by the way that nature actually operates. I don't know how we got back up here. Okay, so now, if we're talking about consciously creating freedom, we should define conscience, which comes from the Latin prefix con, which means together, and the Latin verb sciere, to know. So conscience is etymologically means to know together, or it literally means something that we know together. So the self-evident truth of things and what should be common sense, and how law and nature and God's law actually works, should be things that we are using with conscience, and which would end up meaning we know and understand the difference between what's right and wrong in our behavior. And we don't respect the flattering titles and the fictions, and we know together what's real, and we're practicing consciousness, which is defined as the ability of a being to recognize the patterns and meanings with respect to events taking place both within oneself and in the realm in which the self exists and operates. So it's a deep look at the external, at the macrocosm and the microcosm, and understanding your place in the whole scheme of things, and then understanding, again, what things are moral and what things are immoral based on the self-evident truth and the laws of nature. And what we can see if we look out at the world is that people are not practicing consciousness, and they don't have conscience, and we don't know together. And there are very few people on the planet actually practicing any sort of consciousness. And the meager attempt of folks like myself and others who've obviously done a lot more work and better work towards that end, of getting people to try and go in this direction, which is, like I said, a fool's journey, and I know that. And my attempt here is not to wake everybody up. This is a personal responsibility of mine, what I'm doing, because of certain things that I've come to understand, and I'm fulfilling and acting in that responsibility to pass down knowledge and things that I've come to understand about our reality to others, whether it be younger or older, and I hope to mentor not only my own children and the people that I have close relationships with in my family, but wider community, which is the goal of this production. Not to get a bunch of likes and not to be loved by the community and not for everyone to accept exactly what I'm saying, but it's more of just the personal responsibility that has come on my shoulders and that I've taken on and am acting on based on my understanding of the things that I've come to understand. That's all this is. So, Jiddu Krishnamurti says, we need a tremendous energy to bring about a psychological change in ourselves as human beings, because we have lived far too long in a world of make-believe, in a world of brutality, violence, despair, anxiety. To live humanely, sanely, one has to change. To bring about a change within oneself and therefore within society, one needs this radical energy. For the individual is not different from society. The society is the individual, and the individual is the society. And to bring about a necessary, radical, essential change in the structure of society, which is corrupt, which is immoral, there must be a change in the human heart and mind. So again, does it mean that I'm agreeing with Jiddu Krishnamurti and he's my guru and I'm putting them up there as somebody that everybody needs to go worship? No. And in fact, I think in a lot of ways that's what's done with these guru types and the Gandhis and the Jiddu Krishnamurtis and Oshos and all these other teachers who are false teachers in themselves and gurus in themselves. And this, again, my work is not ever to try to be any sort of guru. And if I quote somebody like Jiddu Krishnamurti, who sometimes actually does hit the nail on the head, such as he does here. I mean, this is just self-evidently true, that what's happening within the individual is manifesting in the society. So anything that we're complaining about that's happening externally is actually the cause, the conditions, why those conditions are in place is because of what's happening inside of the individuals. So when we see what's happening around us in the world, and we're wondering what sort of top-down structure do we need to topple to get this job fixed or whatever, go look in the mirror. Because that's where the enslaver lives. You want to know who the wizard is at the top of the pyramid, who the deep, darkest occultist ever that's running the show? It's right there. Right there in the mirror. So Carl Jung says it in this way, which is, there is no coming to consciousness without pain. People will do anything, no matter how absurd, in order to avoid facing their own soul. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. And so again, I'm not like a Jordan Peterson, Carl Jung and the symbology of the manifestation of dream symbolism. I'm not a huge Jordan Peterson or Carl Jung worshiper. But definitely Carl Jung's work needs to be read and looked through. Most of the books he's written are actually in audio format already. And again, for me, I'm a big consumer of audiobooks. Most of the books I have are not, here with me in this room, first of all, but it's not all encompassed all my wisdom here on this book. Like, this is the digital age, and most of the archive of information that I have is digital, and like thousands of PDFs that I've only begun to skim through, this information. And that's the way I like to consume it initially, is just audio, and then I'll go pick apart the links, and then I'll go pick apart the sources, and then I'll start archiving it myself in my brain, and then I will incorporate it in what needs to be incorporated and cast aside that which shouldn't be, accepted, and bring the arguments to others, and bring the information ultimately, once it's been refined and cleaned off and dusted and smoothed out, to others. And that's all this is. It's all we're doing here. So E.E. Cummings says, to be nobody but yourself in a world which is doing its best night and day to make you like everybody else means to fight the hardest battle which any human being can fight and never stop fighting. And those who have not begun walking the path have no clue what E.E. Cummings is talking about here. But to truly be yourself in a society and a world which is cookie cutter, which is communist, which is trying to destroy that self inside of you, that light, as soon as it comes into the world, it's immediately attacked. And ever since any time beyond that, when anyone tries to walk that path of the individual, the only thing, for the most part, that's going to be coming their way is attack, is bringing down, is chopping off the top, cutting it down a notch, hitting the nail on the top that's sticking out. And society will do its best to push you back in that box and not want you to walk that journey, including those closest to you, including those with the so-called fake relationships with you, who so-called love and relationship with you, who are not themselves on the path whatsoever, and therefore will despise and attack you if you walk the path. And this is definitely speaking from personal experience. It's not some thing that I'm just coming up with. This is how it actually works. And just know that in this world, that the more good that you try to do, the more evil and hatred from others that will come your way. And once you kind of understand that there's a certain level of anxiety and pressure that comes with kind of doing this work here, that becomes much more just understood that that's just how it works, especially in this current place, in the current place and time that we inhabit this 3D dimensional reality. Demented reality is what I say. So here, D.H. Lawrence again says, are you willing to be sponged out, erased, cancelled, made nothing? Are you willing to be made nothing, dipped into oblivion? If not, then you will never really change. And he's alluding to, again, the path of the individual. It's not carved out for someone to start walking, and when they do, they'll find that it's a process of deconstruction. And notice that I said a process, that nothing happens overnight. And this process of deconstructing is what he's talking about here. Not literally like becoming nothing or something, or like canceled. He's saying, are you willing to face everything that you've thought previously that is untrue and remove those things and go through that underworld cycle, through that dark night of the soul? And if not, then you'll never really change. You'll never really address the causal factors of the conditions of your own life, and especially that of the reality in which we inhabit, which we can change. And what we do here does matter, but for the most part, it's ineffective if you've not gone through these types of processes, these sort of initiation ceremonies, right? The rites of passage that, as my contention is that this is another piece of occulted information that's been hidden from us, is that this normality of going through these very stressful and high anxiety times in our lives that are also come along with massive change, and that we should utilize these times in our lives to actually embrace the change and to, like a phoenix rising from the ashes, or like a snake shedding its skin, we can utilize these times of what seems like chaos, which is actually part of a growth cycle. And some people never go through their first growth cycle, or they never even know what a rite of passage, or given a chance to prove themselves in a rite of passage, because of the way that our extended adolescent society works. We're just creating and breeding. They're physically walking around in adult bodies. There are people, here that are physically in a grown adult body, but mentally they're enslaved and children, and they are the extended adolescence program has kept them from ever maturing beyond the helpless child who's completely dependent on the nanny state, the psychological false dialectic big brother system, who now you hear the chant for the socialists. Now you're starting to hear the drum beat for the universal basic income, and society is getting tougher and tougher. The world is getting scarier and scarier. And so people are begging and absolutely screaming and wanting to have Big Brother, Big Daddy, Big Mommy government come in and fix all the problems of the world for them. And you can't, again, look out there and tell me that's not what's happening. And people will say, well, no, it's because they really care about other people and they just want to help. That's why they're begging for social. No, it's because deep down internally they have major mommy-daddy psychological issues, major issues with self-loathing and the disconnect from nature and the disconnect from the truth and the disconnect from the self, and only worshiping all the false titles and flattering titles and legal fictions in the external reality, and begging that system, that satanic system, to come in and fix their lives. And so, again, Jiddu Krishnamurti says, it is truth that liberates, not your effort to be free. And, I've put in the spider again with the fly's web. And so it's not about banging around. It's not about getting attention online. It's not about screaming about your voluntarism. It's not about pushing your false political hollow movements on other people. It's not about waving signs in people's face and getting involved in this movement and that movement. It's about a firm and honest, discovery and investigation of reality and the truth. And through this journey, which nobody wants to go down, which the average person is just loath to do, that's how we ultimately become free. Not our flailing, not our screaming, not our virtue signaling, not our memes, not our, thoughts that we're posting on Twitter. These things aren't what's going to free us. It's a deep, deep investigation and discovery of who and what we really are. That's what will liberate us. That's what will make us free. And I'm speaking as, again, right here with you all, and whoever's listening to this is probably not in the primary matrix. So anyone, who's in the secondary matrix, or the haters, I guess, in the primary matrix, are people from my past acquaintance live, or people that I've worked with, that are watching this just to hate, just to, talk shit about me, basically. And, look, what's this jackass doing on here online trying to do whatever he's doing, That's the average attitude that people come to people like me with, or anyone who's saying something outside of their video game world, or outside of their mainstream media completely controlled paradigm, So, again, back to Jung, who says, "But I speak not to nations, only to the individual few, for whom it goes without saying that cultural values do not drop down like manna from heaven, but are created by the hands of individuals. If things go wrong in the world, this is because something is wrong with the individual, because something is wrong with me. Therefore, if I am sensible, I shall put myself first right. For this I need, because no outside authority no longer means anything to me. I need a knowledge of the innermost foundations of my being, in order that I may base myself firmly on the eternal facts of the human psyche." So, in the Jungian language, what Carl Jung is doing here with the symbology of what he's interpreting of the dreams interpretation and the symbology of Carl Jung. That's what Jordan Peterson says. I've been working on some of the interpretations. I know that Jay Dyer has the Jordan Peterson lockdown, but I don't think my JP's too bad, really, honestly. If you take a look at my JP, bro, it's pretty good, bro. Oh, again, but I mean, back to this. This is really important. This is not as popular of a Carl Jung quote, but he's saying that he's not. Is he speaking is he trying to get out there and run for president? Is he trying to talk to the groups? And no, he says he's talking only to the individual few. So he understands his audience. He gets the target audience of who's going to actually go through and take the time to read his work. And he's saying what I'm trying to portray here, that it's what's happening within the individual that needs to be addressed. It's our understanding of psychology that needs to be addressed. It's our understanding of the nature of evil and our ability to invoke it, and what evil is exactly. And again, going back to if you're taking, Christianity and the Bible and all that as like religious nonsense that who would ever believe that, and you're just throwing it out. Or the other way, and you're taking it all completely literally and word for word literally, and so it's a literal interpretation. That's why the atheist has the adverse reaction that they do, because they're saying, well, if that's literal, then you're totally crazy, right? But the intelligent way, the correct way to look at the story of the Bible and what's written there is that it's actually ancient wisdom teachings and things that people have come to discover through time that have been put into a way that we can understand, that describe God and the law and natural law. And so it's all an allegory on just how to be, like how to live your life, based on following the life of Christ, which is just really law, which is how law works, how nature works, how things actually get created in nature, how to walk in the world without being enslaved and not respecting false titles and flattering titles and false governments and false gods known as the government, the external government, right? And to respect that which is real. So what Carl Jung is getting at with that is that, first of all, Carl Jung is not getting at what I just said with the Bible and all that, but what I'm saying is that, I forget what the point is actually of going in, why I started to go back into the Bible rant, but it's fine because I need to leave that disclaimer probably about 50 to 100 more times before people start getting it through their head when I'm using the language that I'm using, which is the best language to try to portray what it is that I'm trying to portray. So I'm not going to stop using words like God or, God's law or things, or Jesus or things like that. Once people understand what I mean, then I don't care if they get it or not. At that point, it's your problem if you're the one with the childlike mindset of throwing it all out because it's just it's nonsense religion, or just completely 100% interpreting it as the truth. And so what I'm going to do here is go into a quote which you should trust because it's from a Mason, right? No, I'm just kidding. Albert Churchward was a Mason, but this is an interesting quote. And what he says is, "A man who clings to sensuals cannot associate with spirituals. A man who relies only on his common sense, on his money-getting power, or on his mere energy after good dinners, will never reach the higher and spiritual planes, which, however, are not less real because they are unseen of such. If we want the truth, we must labor for it quite as hard as we labor for gold." Well, thank you, my brother Mason. It's very Masonically artsy language, but I agree with what he's saying, that if we are going to seek the truth and seek, what's real and walk that path of the individual, then we need to treat that as hard as we treat our regular 9-to-5 jobs and our slave jobs, right? Not that having a job makes you a slave, but the way that our corporate legal structure works is that actually is what makes you enslaved. I'm not saying I'm opposed to work. I'm not a radical communist who thinks that we just need universal basic income and the others shouldn't have to work so hard because it's just the rich people that are screwed. I'm not a Occupy Wall Street idiot. I'm going to be breaking all that down too, and we're going to go into, in the second part of falling into the movement traps, will be the secondary matrix and the failed movement section. So the next presentation being the struggle for freedom. After that, we're going to get into the failed movements, and I'll clarify my position because people are, well, if you're not this and you're not that, what are you? Well, Tesla here helps us discover who and what we really are by saying to be alone, and that is the secret of invention. Be alone. That is when ideas are born. And coming from the great mind of Nikola Tesla, and this does not mean to be some kind of weirdo or to be a loser. Here he's talking about the cycle of the hermit, right? To be in tune with the self, to be at one with the all, which is what we are in tune with ultimately. And knowing ourselves, we can know God. We can know it all through this introspective work. And Nietzsche has to say, freedom is the will to be responsible for ourselves. It is to preserve the distance which separates us from other men. So think about that one for a minute, because obviously the way Nietzsche talks, it's kind of a dialectic itself sometimes. He's not talking, again, it's not about not having relationships with other people or not having a social life. It's saying that path, that individual path that you're having to walk, is going to bring on the most responsibility that you're going to have to face and take on to get the ultimate state of what a human being should be, which is free. And to get out of that, you need to separate yourself from the groups, separate yourself from the society for a while, separate yourself from the influences of the movements and the other people and the online gurus and the friends and family and the social pressures and the friends at work. And like Tesla was saying, to go and be alone. And that is when, true invention is born. And so these things aren't easily done. And these minds and these people that I've brought on the show so far to rely and, pay homage and to also, due diligence of bringing these people to others that haven't discovered the works of the people that I will bring into my streams, which if there's someone that I definitely think people shouldn't look into for whatever reason, I'll try to give that caveat too. But we're talking about, again, what E.E. Cummings said, the hardest thing that you're going to have to do is to try to be yourself. And Nietzsche went completely insane trying to work through these things. And so it's when you go into the abyss stares back. And again, at this time and place on the planet, it's quite frightening to pull your head out of the sand and start taking inventory of the conditions of what's going on. But at the same time, it's absolutely necessary. Otherwise, enjoy your slavery. Enjoy the conditions that are created for us. Enjoy being in the Borg collective. And Henry Bergson says it this way: liberty consists in being entirely oneself. Simple enough. And, highlighting what the main point of what we're talking about here. Another brilliant mind and partner of the brilliant Walter Russell, Leo Russell, says, the very purpose of your being on Earth as a living, breathing entity is so that you will make that unparalleled discovery of what life and love truly are. Manly P. Hall has it, every man's true teacher is his own higher self. And when the life is brought under the control of reason, the higher self is released from bondage to the appetites and impulses, and becomes priest and priestess, sage and illuminator. Manly P. Hall, the often misrepresented and misinterpreted 33rd degree Mason, who was supposedly initiated only as a 33rd degree and never had to actually go through a Masonic lodge to receive that title. Apparently they just wanted him as a part of their club because he was a sage and illuminator. And what you need to do is go and listen to the direct works of Manly Paul, which are all over, and I'll put a link in the show notes once I re-listen to this and hear me saying this part of some of the best, or I'll just pick a really good Manly P. Hall work that people should go listen to. And listen to the man for yourself. And don't, take the person, whatever kind of conspiracy, you've heard around Manly Palmer Hall as the truth without doing some investigation on the primary works of what he says himself, which is just astonishing. I mean, the man was doing circuits of speeches up until late in his life. Just, there's unlimited amount. I mean, it seems as though there's an unlimited amount of Manly Palmer Hall work on the internet. It's all on YouTube for free. And this guy, regardless of all the rumor, was not some evil Satanist trying to manipulate everybody. And you can get that through just listening to the work yourself. Okay, so inscribed on now, and actually here, let me take a sec here. I want to remind everyone really quick, anyone that's watching, let me just check that you can you can join the Discord room and get on a live call-in question after the show if you'd like to ask a question about the information presented today or presented recently, or just ask a question to the show. I integrated a Discord server for TylerBloyer.com, which has a live call-in show, and I can actually take your call right here on the air. For information on that, you can go to TylerBloyer.com/live, and that will get you what you need to get into there. And probably in about 30 minutes or so, I'll be jumping and taking live calls. So if you have a question, you want to get on and ask me something and be on the show live, you can join the Discord live room, in which case I will then unmute you from the server side once I'm ready to take your call. So please do that, even if it's just as a test, if we could, just to test it out on the show. So again, now inscribed on the walls at the Temple of Apollo at Delphi says this famous quote here, which I'm sure, maybe people in my circle online would be familiar with, which says, "Heed these words, you who wish to probe the depths of nature. If you do not find within yourself that which you seek, neither will you find it outside. If you ignore the wonders of your own house, how do you expect to find other wonders? In you is hidden the treasure of treasures. Know thyself, and you will know the universe and the gods." And so this is in one way where the know thyself saying is attributed to, and back to ancient Greek, which really, as this is alluding to here, is actually ancient Egyptian philosophy. And so in several ways we'll have this said again, which is from the Gospel of Thomas, "But the kingdom of heaven is within you, and it is outside of you. When you know yourselves, then you will be known, and you will know that you are sons of the living Father. But if you do not know yourselves, then you are in poverty, and you are poverty." And that's the Gospel of Thomas, which is a book not commonly included in the main biblical text, but which absolutely should be. And saying the same thing now, if we know ourselves, then we will know that we are sons of the living Father. Not some anthropomorphized deity in the sky, sons of the living universe. We are part of the all. Right? And so, again, I'll give the disclaimer quickly again that any religious binding religious type mentality that the Bible should be interpreted absolutely literally, and that the story of Christ is like the story of an actual person. Now, whether he existed on the planet or not doesn't really matter. The Bible itself should be and correctly is read as an anthropomorphization as an allegorical. What you shouldn't do is anthropomorphize the story into actually giving God like human-like creatures, characteristics, which is what the allegory ultimately is intending to do, is to explain something through fiction, through a story, in order to provide a better introspective look at what they're trying to get across, which is very probably difficult and dull to do in just some sort of, this is how things work, and this is the law, and this is how God existence actually works. It's actually a quite creative and intelligent way, which covers like almost every angle of how like evil operates and what kind of legal fictions and artifices that you'll get caught up into here on this planet and how to combat them. And so it's not just some worthless thing that we should just throw out atheistically to try to just throw it out as some religious like Santa Claus or the Easter Bunny nonsense, And that's the mistake, and that what it should be re-inspected and to respect and look again at the book and the teachings and the text as a law book, as the ultimate law book, which in the weird way is actually what we live under in the United States of America. And I'm speaking like we because that's where I live, and I'm a slave, and I talk that way. But it's because that book is actually what our law system is based on. And in God we trust in all this. And the Bible, when you put your hand on the Bible, this is not, and swear an oath in court, which is the only time that a politician or that you are told that you have to speak the truth, is when you swear the oath on the Bible, right? And it's blasphemous because immediately right there you're doing that in a man's law court system, which you're only supposed to live under one law, under one God, which is the God of the Bible, which is nature, which is existence, which is everything, and not the fiction, right? Not to respect. There's a reason why that's the first commandment, not to have any other gods before Jehovah, which is existence, which is everything. So you yourself are even another little world, and have within you the sun and the moon and also the stars. Origen of Alexandria is a church father. Do you not know that the temple of God that dwells in you, do you not know that you are the temple of God, and that the Spirit of God dwells in you? If anyone defiles the temple of God, God will destroy him, for the temple of God is holy, which temple you are. So again, what's the solution? Knowing thyself. How do we do that? Come to understand what's real, and then realize that we are a part of that all, and that we are a part of creation. We are a part of nature. And to truly understand this is the first stepping stone into actually walking down the path to freedom and the path of the individual, and will actually give us the keys that we need to break the conditions as they currently are. None of this airy-fairy nonsense about this political movement and that political movement, and the Anarchapulco people have it right. They're all almost 100% off the path, 100% into thinking that it's an economic problem and a Bitcoin problem, and cryptocurrency is going to fix it all for us. And if we just beg for our voluntary masters to voluntarily stop harassing us, that'll work. Or if, what we'll do is we'll just vote for Adam Kokesh, who's going to abolish the federal government. I mean, none of this is hitting on the point of any of what is being discussed here in this presentation. I hope you know that. I hope I'm making it clear that I am out of the whole libertarian, John Lockean natural rights philosophy worldview, and that it's about responsibility. It's about a responsibility to the truth and to freedom and to the self that is going to change the conditions for the better. Not the responsibility to your group and your movement and your false hollow shell of empty, inauthentic virtue signaling bullshit. From the Gospel of Thomas again, recognize what is in your sight, and that which is hidden from you will become plain to you. For there is nothing hidden which will not become manifest. And that's attributed to Christ from the Gospel of Thomas. Again, Christ being Logos, the law, the spoken law of God, which is the spiritual laws that govern this place. The laws of nature that we need to live our lives according are personified and allegorized through the words of Christ in the Bible. It's not some airy-fairy nonsense that just needs to be disregarded. And so Clement of Alexandria puts it, "The greatest of all lessons is to know yourself, for when a man knows himself, he knows God." So when we understand ourselves, when we stand under that which is real, that which we are, when we know thyself, when we have come to understand the true definition of God, this can make perfect sense and be a very holistic worldview, and start to put the pieces together of that humanity is not just some retarded, we are a retarded race of human beings at the moment, but to just take Christianity as a whole and just completely throw it out is a giant mistake. And I think I've made that point abundantly clear in this presentation, and I will continue to make it even more so abundantly clear, because I know how people take things and how people hear what I'm saying. They don't hear what I'm actually saying, they hear what they want to hear. And that is something that we need to help people to see, and so something that I'm working on myself is to get this information out. This is very important information for people to try to start getting into and looking at. And to be honest with you, one of the books that's helped me really kind of turn all these corners and get into understanding this information is Clint Richardson's work, The Straw Man Story, and part 2 is out on his website for free. You can download it, and I'll be putting it in the links. I think that everyone should go through part 1 and part 2 of his series, The Straw Man Story. And he really gets into breaking down the legal fiction, and a lot of this information that I'm just kind of touching on here is actually information that Clint helped me directly to understand. So finally, the final quote we have for today here is from Tesla, who says, "The gift of mental power comes from the divine, and if we concentrate our minds on that which we become, on that truth, we become in tune with this great power." So, again, from one of the greatest minds of the 20th century, and one of the most suppressed and attacked minds, has it correct that once we concentrate on this truth and we become to understand who and what we really are, that connection to the imperial self is an actual portal, in a way, to a whole ancestral knowledge that opens up. And the vessel that you're inhabiting at the moment and that you're an agent of is actually like a receiver, and has humanity's traumatic past and conscious and past, and the wisdom of humanity is within you as well, and the wisdom of God and the wisdom of nature is accessible to all. And Tesla here has it correct. And so that's all for the official slideshow presentation today. I hope it's been good. I feel like I went through that as practiced, and that it was something that I didn't come out the way, like I said, that I originally started off. But I will go back and touch on more of these, how to build the positive external relationships too, because ultimately to integrate the information in this in presentation is a process. That's not something that I expect people to hear what I say and just accept it as truth, but to begin to think about these things in a more scrutinous way, and actually take what I'm saying and process it and critically think through the information that's been presented here, and see where that takes you. And I kind of forgot what I was saying there, which I often do, but sometimes it comes right back. But anyway, so next live stream is going to be, I've decided to give the Struggle for Freedom part 1 of Falling into the Movement Traps series will be presented live in a similar format to what you've seen here today and what you've seen in the last live stream. I've worked out a lot of the glitches and bugs. It seems to work pretty well. I'm happy with the end result. Of course, I have local copies saved of these streams as well. In case there's ever a problem, I can go back and touch something up or pull something down and fix it up and re-upload it. And they're much higher production value because it's recorded directly here and not streamed with the compression and the bandwidth issues that a stream has. But honestly, it's reached a point where I feel like the audio is good enough. It follows my face and mouth close enough, and the OBS situation is working out just fine. And as long as I can continue to do shows like this, I think this is a good format, and it seems to be it works well for me. So again, that's all the slides that I had for you today. Now, since we've been going for about an hour and 30 minutes, I want to take a minute and review any of the chats that have been occurring through the live stream. and also give people a sec to hop into the Discord server because I don't see anybody in there at the moment. So we don't have any live calls or questions to take as of yet. So I can come back and wrap up and summarize, and we'll spend a little bit more time together. I'm going to be here for a little while longer today, but I will be taking a brief intermission, just a 5-minute break or so, maybe a little bit more than that. And I'll be right back though, and I'm just going to put on some intermission music. And I appreciate anyone who's hung out this long. But again, what I'd like you to do, if you want to ask a question or get on the live show and talk about things or get into a conversation, go to tylerbloyer.com/live, and the instructions on how to hop into my Discord server are there. And then once you're in the Discord server, just hop into the live call-in room, and I can bring you on, and we'll have a chat. Again, we're taking a 5-minute break here, and we'll be right back in 5. Thanks, everyone. back after that 5-minute break. Thanks for sticking with me. So it appears that we don't have anyone in the Discord, which is fine. It would be nice to at least know if the chat was working, the live chat into the OBS, but I've done enough testing that we'll have it there. We'll have it there for the live shows. Confident that it will work when we need it, and I guess I'll just have to go from there. But again, I'll be here for a little bit longer today. If there is somebody who wants to hop on, tylerbloyer.com/live. The links to get into the Discord are there. And moving forward with tylerbloyer.com, I think the Discord is going to be kind of a place that I build out as somewhat of the little, like kind of the forum or the community where people can have discussions about the show or chat when the show is going on live. We'll see about that. I may lock it down a little bit more and kind of, only use it for the live show if it becomes a nuisance or a distraction, which is another reason why I don't allow comments on my YouTube videos after they're done streaming, or don't really get into being on Facebook all day or social medias. Like, I have a comment section on each one of my posts in the website, and from there I will respond, and you can get a hold of me through my website. But I don't want to end up in another kind of like Pavlovian rat maze of chasing the cheese in all these like platforms, because there's just so many, like Discord and Slack and Telegram and Facebook and Twitter and Minds and YouTube, and it's like I essentially will respond to my emails and to the website comments and questions, and I'll address people very thoroughly, and I'll get back to you in those forums. But it's not that I'm not responding on Facebook or something, but I try to help people not message me on Facebook by not responding to them. So if I don't respond to your stuff on Facebook, it's because I don't really want to get on and spend a lot of time discussing and arguing and talking about things with people on Facebook. So again, so we'll be going into the Struggle for Freedom presentation, which I'm excited to go into. It's going to go a lot more into the psychology of the human condition. So I've talked about my take on the human condition. I've now presented a solution-based podcast, which today was, if you didn't catch that, kind of a good summary of again, the wisdom that I've discovered to be truth, and then relate it through using others' work who are all generally sort of saying the same thing, to rely on those much greater minds to put it into the words that I'm just sort of relaying and rapping upon on top of it, which is a meager attempt again to tease out some of these points, and time will be needed for me to go into more depth and more explanation. But there's something within the human species that actually is craving the conditions of the Big Brother panopticon. Again, the cybernetic technocratic control grid is a manifestation of what's happening inside of each one of us. So as this presentation today went into, that understanding more about ourselves is the solution, and understanding more about the true self and what that means. And then, in my opinion, taking that into the worldview of what the Bible, or sorry, not the worldview, but taking in the information from the Bible in the way that it was meant to be interpreted, and not the way that it's falsely been interpreted and incorrectly been interpreted by, billions of people who've come through on this planet as some kind of like literal prophecy from God, who they're anthropomorphizing nature and trying to put human-like characteristics onto something that was never meant to be that. It's meant to be talking about how things work, how reality works, what is real, and how to operate through that existence without becoming completely and totally enslaved, which we are rapidly already in this condition and headed for worse slavery with human 2.0. Transhumanism is where we're going with all this, where we can actually literally bring into reality the artificial demons, and basically a literal hell on earth will be created through people's misunderstanding of who and what we really are, and all the false fear porn, propaganda, control, eugenic, social Darwinistic agendas that are being pushed from the top down, inciting corruption and moral relativism and the inability for human beings to decipher and determine for themselves what's right and wrong and how to critically think and how to morally operate in the world. There's a reason why we're all losing and getting worse off in these conditions. Not we all, like everyone who's bought into this, which is the vast, overwhelming bulk of humanity, is in deep sleep and under deep hypnosis of sorts, under mind control. And we'll definitely be going into these topics more. I am going to rebring on the show my creature of control information, which goes into this creature, which goes into the current condition of men and the minds and of men and what's going on to create the world that we've created. And I feel like I did a really good job back with that series, and I will be kind of reviewing them and doing them in this format now. And what we went into in that show was understanding the psychopath and understanding the lack of empathy and psychopaths, as well as like narcissists and egomaniacs. And that show is still really worth going through, and you can find that in the feed. But I'm going to turn that into presentation format style that we can do live here on the show, and pull out the Creature of Control series again, which really it gives us like some pieces to the puzzle that people need to have. They need to understand psychopathy and that psychopaths exist, and so that we stop imparting our morality and our decision making that we would do in a situation on other people and saying, well, I would never do that, no one would ever do that, about certain things that people do. And a lot of it is through naivete and ignorance and apathy towards, wanting to know and making the right decision and taking responsibility for what's actually going on. It's how like a Chernobyl type event happens, right? And socialism, and how people get into the mindset of just not thinking for themselves. There is another thing on the planet operating where psychopathy does exist, a lack of empathy and feeling towards others. And not like a lack of it, like they're just not working on that aspect of their life, like the literal physical inability to feel these things, but then that bringing on other characteristics, which, cunning, intellect, and other things that, if packaged together in a certain person, can bring about someone who does thrive on climbing to the top of these super dominant structures, and always especially trying to look like they're the most virtuous. So you'll see them in politics and religion. The most venomous snakes, the most psychopathic people are going to be in religion and politics, simply because that's the best place to hide, because that's where they can find their victims and wear the mask of doing the right thing while being the most horrible, evil, satanic people on the planet. You know what I mean? So that was episode 1, which I'll be covering again. We'll probably do a whole episode on that topic. And then we went into social Darwinism and eugenics, which two pieces to the puzzle that if you don't have, it's not an accurate view of what's happening on this planet. If you don't understand the history of eugenics, so that when someone like me brings to you, years and years of research that I've done on the vaccination issue, and you have all these things going on in your head. Well, how could that happen? And that means all these other different people would have to be in on it, and that means that the scientific community would all have to be in on it. And like, if you don't have social Darwinism and eugenics in your repertoire of understanding of history and what's created the world in the way that it is up until now, there are things, like I said, like the Cecil Rhodes the Milner Roundtable groups, and the Cecil Rhodes Scholarship, and the infiltration of American education and media and government by the Anglo-American establishment, and Skull and Bones 322, and like I said, these different secret society groups, which it's not just like, oh, secret society groups. It's open in your face, like Fabian socialism is what people like currently, still pushing, like Bernie Sanders or any other democratic socialist is pushing an ideology that was created, and not just an ideology, a political movement that manifests into physical boots on the ground, like people actually coming for your things and children and life. So it's a dangerous belief system to have. They don't understand that Fabian socialism came from eugenicists, from people who wanted to socially engineer the dumb idiot population as they see it, which at this point in time you can't disagree with them because that's exactly what we are. But their treatment of the issue is quite different. The moral virtuous sage type person will actually take this and start then trying to help people become enlightened. But the sick, psychopathic, ruling elite social Darwinist eugenicist says, well, we'll use, diet, injection, and injunction to form the minds how we want them formed, and people will mold, their brains will be molded to our molding hands, and we'll take a young child from early age on and completely form them into the corporate, maritime law, stock market traded slave who's just property of our of the real we the people of the United States. And this is what we need to do to make sure that it's all based in fear, because it's always that we don't run out of food, or that the people don't take over the governments, or that another French Revolution doesn't happen, or all these people don't start actually waking up and having some initiative to do anything about it. So they will do things like poison the water, poison the air, poison the food, poison the vaccinations, poison you from day one, do things that are deeply occulted information to your psychology that you don't even ever understand, in order to dumb you down and control you. And that's not a reach. That's not me making this up. That's not me coming up with some giant explanation and I'm some crazy whacked out conspiracy theorist. Like, that's directly from their own mouths, directly from the people who did it, directly from the Aldous Huxleys, the Julian Huxleys, the UNESCOs, directly from the Carol Quigleys, the insiders, the people who spent lifetimes of their whole life looking into this information and brought it to humanity at the very threat of their own life and imprisonment and the destruction of their own family, and having to go through so much pain and suffering to actually bring us this information. And people cast it aside. Well, that's just some conspiracy theory. That's just some thing that you're just making up, because they're so dumbed down and indoctrinated that they don't even understand the things that are coming at them. They're not a graduate of the Peace Revolution podcast of Richard Grove of TragedyandHope.com. They haven't gone down through the thousands and thousands of hours of podcast information that he's laid out and tried to understand what he's trying to explain there, which is really what I'm getting at here, which is these pieces to the puzzle that the Creature of Control series I tried to start to bring out. And that's again why I'm bringing this up, because in the future we'll start bringing these pieces back to people so that they understand the history of social engineering and social Darwinism and behaviorism and Common Core education and eugenics, and how this all ties in together. And then you start to see the world as it actually is. And so that when I can create an entire playlist of vaccination research, which I have. So let me just share this out really quick. Here's the playlist that I've created over the years, and it does need to be updated and revised. And once Clint Richardson's next documentary on vaccines is out, it's probably going to top like all of these, knowing Clint and his work. But the Lethal Injection, the story of our vaccination, that's the Corporation Nation. That's Clint Richardson. I referred to that gentleman's work earlier. And someone that I think people should definitely really go check out and look into his work and read through his articles. His work is extremely verbose, but with the Pocket app, I did in my first live stream, the Pocket app and the Voice Aloud reader, now you don't have an excuse, because you just sync it to your phone and it reads it to you. So these long articles, I've just been having my phone basically read them to me. Now, again, I do the diligence of going back and actually opening that up on a desktop computer that's off of my phone and archiving and digging up the links and looking through the sources. But initially, when you just need to get through the article to understand what's in there, just listen to it, on your phone. And go back and listen to my live stream from 2 weeks ago, or 2 live streams ago, and it had in there, I talk about the Pocket app, and it's in the resources on the website too. So I've linked all those resources in the website. But this, again, going back to last week, that it's not about the facts. I can bring this information to somebody, and I've done so. And it's falling on deaf ears. They throw it in the mud. They scream at me in my face that I need to be looking at scientific studies and doctors and scientists, and if I'm not doing that, then I'm just some crazy conspiracy theorist. So I give them the very first episode, which brings on doctors, scientists, pediatricians, homeopaths, engineers. I mean, people who understand the mechanics of vaccinations even, and how immunity works in the human body, biologists, and of course, that's not good enough. That's not the consensus that they're looking for. That's not the scientific community answer that they want. That's not the official narrative of the CDC. So I'm not even going to look at that, but I'm going to keep telling you that you need to bring me scientific information and doctors and actual resources. And I can't YouTube this for you. And the YouTube video, this is just a starting point. I understand that this is not proper way to do research. This is not how I learned about vaccinations, is going through these YouTube videos. I learned through hard study and hard work, and going through and downloading archives of information and reading through the scientific studies, coming to the point where I understand the risks, and the explicit detailed risks of taking the vaccinations are very right in your face. I mean, it's right on the label that you can die from certain vaccinations, like the MMR vaccination. Oh, there's a risk of fatality right on the label. And there's a whole court set up in case that happens, so that you can sue the slave taxpayers to pay for the vaccination damage, since all the vaccine companies are completely immune from being sued by anybody. And again, this is not like me, now I'm really getting deep into the information here. This is, if you're barely understanding vaccinations, you don't understand the issues overall whatsoever. Like I said, if you're just barely starting, this is a playlist I put together to try to plant that seed, to try to give people a place to go, because I was so tired of getting into conversations with people about vaccinations and then having them go, well, there's no evidence out there of anything, there's nothing that you can provide, and I have a whole 20 hours here of different information and doctors and biologists and scientists and researchers and mothers and parents and different people who are extremely well versed on the issues surrounding vaccinations, but they won't watch it. I literally have had issues with people who won't even watch the first 10 minutes of the first video, and will continue to tell me to my face that there's no evidence out there of any issues with the vaccines. That dumb. Like, literally so retarded that someone can give you information and you say that's not true before you've even looked at it, because of this appeal to consensus, because of this appeal to the scientific community, which is a logical fallacy. It's not that you can't appeal to consensus once the information is also provided, but just the appeal to consensus is completely hollow. It means you not looking into it. It means you are openly admitting to everyone's face that you are not going to look at that. You're going to put your head in the sand, and you're going to keep saying the same stupid nonsense garbage bullshit that you've been taught in the damn indoctrination camps from the social engineers who put you there to dumb you down and depopulate your ass. And it's working. So I bring this to you here today, and I'll put it in the show notes, so it can be a valuable tool for others who feel the pain of what I'm talking about here and who need it as a backup resource. And again, I always give the disclaimer that every single link should be gone through, every resource followed up, and read the books that are referred to, read the doctors, read the documentaries that are referred to. This is just a starting off point. This is just a jumping off place. And I also recommend people to share it out with their friends and family. This whole playlist, I'll update it from now and again, and then I'll share it out every now and again, but that's not getting it out there enough. I would recommend sharing this out once you've gone through the information yourself, of course, and validated the things that are in there. Now, again, that was a little bit of a tangent, and I've gone on for the 2-hour time that I planned on going as a minimum. I can also always stay on for a little bit longer if there's something that needs to be said, or the presentation goes into more depth, or there's a live caller or multiple live callers. But today, again, it appears that there's nobody in the Discord server anyhow, so I think we'll cut it there. I do implore people to follow up with, my last little rant there, and hit me up if you have any questions on any of those items. But again, in the future on this show, we're going to be going to more in depth on these issues to bring out in my own way, which is a lot of this stuff's already been covered in depth quite well other places. But there's a twist, and I think as you can start to appreciate here, information that I'm adding to this that I don't see anywhere else actually in this format, in this way. And so, again, the goal with the live stream and the whole goal of what I'm doing here is trying to bring out information that's not being said, that needs to be said, that's not just repeating all the same things that every other person doing YouTube videos or whatever is saying, while still bringing in pieces that need to be brought in as a reminder and to add to the work. But tylerbloyer.com and my posts, it's not like I'm 100%, I'm always going to be the most unique son of a bitch out there. Like, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that the only reason I'm stepping up and doing this is because there are things that I've come to understand through the research and investigations and knowledge of thyself that I've come to understand, that it's time to start speaking it out based on the lack of this area I see being covered, especially, kind of what we went into today. And I think we need to hit on that in a very strong way, and also adding in a mixture of my past work and brushing it off and bringing it back to a new platform in order to get that information out as well. Because that's what I noticed out there talking to the public, talking to people in person about any of this stuff, is that they have this massive blind spot with certain things. And it's obviously because of the education system. I understand that as well. And so we're going to be talking about that as well. Not because it hasn't been covered very well elsewhere. Like I said, in the future, I'll also be bringing on interviewees. So people that can highlight and be the expert if we need a fancy title. If we need to honor their flattering titles of historian or whoever it is. Really just other people out there who've helped me. Mentors of mine will be brought on this show, people that I'm working with now, who I'm really excited. I've started some new relationships recently and forged stronger relationships with people that I've worked with in the past. And just actually a few days ago, I've started off onto a new thing, and it's going to be the autonomy course from Richard Grove from tragedyandhope.com. I've started into season 2. I was able to work out a way to get into the course. It's not cheap, and once I master this material, I will be becoming an advocate for the course. I can already tell that it's just going to add to what I'm doing here on the show. Having those people to just be influencers of mine, or for me to be able to bounce ideas off of them, I think is only going to improve the quality of this performance and this show. So really just good things happening all around, even just since starting doing my own live stream. And in the future, I may be in a lot of other different locations too, because the life that I've created, as long as things work out the way that they've are going, is that me and my family are going to be able to travel quite a bit more, and this show will become sort of on the road, different locations, and actually going and meeting in person a lot of the people that I'm friends with, so-called friends with online, that have actually, we have really good relationships all around the country, and I want to go actually spend time with people and get to know them and their situation a little bit better. So anyways, guys, I'm going to leave it there for today. Go spend some time with my family. I again, this episode took a turn. I was going to start off kind of talking about talking to younger men on how to create a positive relationship for themselves, because honestly, like, I want people to have what I have. I think what I have is the most beautiful thing that someone can experience while being here on this planet, which is a happy, healthy family, a beautiful, loving wife, and beautiful children. And to be able to experience that every day is not only the most challenging thing that someone will probably have to do, but also it's a great way to, fight the system as people want to do. And I know that people have a huge anxiety on they want to do something and they want to address the issues that are happening on the planet. And I'm telling you that taking the information from today's episode and then creating that environment for yourself and then opening that up to other people, meaning your family, and creating a positive family. I know not everybody out there is going to create children and have a monogamous relationship with a person of another gender, but in my opinion, that's really the way that nature intended it to be. And once you're walking that path, there's so much feedback that it's the correct thing to do, that it ends up becoming a self-evident truth that, the most important thing that a person can do to change things for the better is to first do that internally, to come to ask the big questions of understanding who and what we really are, and then taking that outwardly once it's been ingrained and understood yourself to others with that unlimited, ever-expanding love that we can create right inside of us at any time. And you are it. You are already it. You are already the wonder of creation. You are already as God. You are one with God, and this, again, the meaning of everything, the universe, and all of existence. And there's no guru, movement, group, government, or anything that needs to give you that. You already have it inside of you, and that's what we were trying to bring out here today. All right, everyone, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate your time and attention, and I look forward to talking to you again. Thanks.